So, I've had a few requests for more detailed instructions on how to make the basic head. So here's a video showing it made from start to finish. I start out with a magic ring, and there are more detailed tutorials on how to do that online. I'll post links to those below. And I make 6 single crochet in the ring. Some patterns will count the first stitch as a chain stitch. I go ahead and count it as a single crochet. It doesn't really matter how you count, just make sure you have the right number of total stitches. What I do to count is I start here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I pull my ring closed. And since the head is worked in rounds instead of in a spiral, I'm going to make a slip stitch to close the round. And this first slip stitch is a little bit tricky. You have to really push to get the hook in there. Alright, that's the first round. Now I'm going to go up. I'm going to make my chain stitch. And the first stitch is going to go in the same space as that slip stitch. And I'm going to increase all the way around. And what I do to secure this end of the yarn is I just sort of wrap it around the back as I make the second row, and that just keeps the ring from loosening as I work, so it stays all the way closed. And sometimes this first round is a little bit tight because you are working with a smaller hook than you normally would for this weight of yarn. And that is important because for these toys you don't want the fabric to drape like you would with like an afghan or a sweater or a lot of other crocheted projects. You want it to be a very stiff fabric. It should almost hold its shape on its own without any stuffing. Alright, there's row 2, and you can see I've sort of twisted the end of this yarn around inside the stitches, so it shouldn't pull loose, and it should keep the center nice and closed. Alright, second row. Again, I'm going to work in the same space as the slip stitch. I'm going to make 2 more increased stitches, 3 single crochet, 3 more increased stitches, and 3 more single crochet. And I will slip stitch to end the row. That's row 3. Once again, the single crochet in same is going to go in the same space as the slip stitch. And then I make 3 single crochet, 1 increase, 4 single crochet, another increase, 3, and then I get to the end of the row. And once again, this is where the row ends. A lot of people seem to be a little bit confused with the rows instead of spirals. It's understandable. A lot of toys are made in only spirals. Really, the reason you would do rows instead is sometimes when you're working with a small number of stitches, your rows are going to be at a slight tilt if you're working in a spiral. If you're working in rows, you can count on them to be a little more horizontally flat. not at a slight vertical. Alright, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, so we're going to work the single crochet around rows. These should be pretty straightforward if you've made it this far. I'll slow down just a little bit at the end of the row, since I want you to be able to see one more time where I'm closing the row up, because sometimes people either skip a stitch or add a stitch and end up with a too high or too low stitch count at the end of their rows. And also, if you are just getting started with crochet and you're having trouble getting the right stitch count, I do recommend, if you're not using the same yarn as I am, try to pick something that's relatively plain, not too fuzzy. You can see these stitches are relatively crisp. This is a cotton acrylic blend, and you can see pretty clearly where the hook is supposed to go in on each stitch. With a fuzzier yarn, you're going to have a harder time seeing where you're supposed to place your stitches. Alright, so I've gotten to the end of the row. I'm going to put my hook in here and make my slip stitch, and that closes it up. So I should have the same number of single crochet stitches for each of these single crochet around rows. I shouldn't be gaining or losing any. Also, I will note, with my stitch counts, I generally don't count the chain stitch or the slip stitch in the stitch counts. It's only the single crochet stitches, or in some of the other items, you would also include any double crochet, triple crochet, those kinds of stitches, just not the chain stitch or the slip stitch.